You would have thought with an exploding population and therefore, logically, more criminals, that the answer would be to invest and build more prisons. But no. And this story is one we've heard before, but it's back again. The idea that prisoners could be released up to 2 months early to prevent overcrowding. I wonder, does that actually make any sense at all? Well, I'm going to ask Mark Fairhurst, National Chairman of the Prison Officers Association. Mark, I know and understand that conditions in many of our prisons are truly awful. I'm also told by prison officers that morale in your service is perhaps not as good as it could be. But tell me, does it really make sense to keep reducing sentences just because we haven't got enough prison places?
Well, this is a situation, Nigel, that was both predictable and preventable. Their own advisors 3 years ago told them that they didn't have enough spaces to satisfy demand in the future. So they could have reacted years ago to prevent this. Since this government came to power, they've closed over 20 public sector jails and built only 6. So it's entirely on their watch that this crisis is now a tipping point. And some people have said by Easter we'll be full. Well, I think that's really optimistic. By the end of next week, the adult closed male estate will have no spaces left.
And no spaces left, overcrowded prisons, tends to mean prisoners loitering for long periods of time, not being given constructive things to do. And we had Anne Widdecombe in the other week, former prisons minister, and she said that inactive prisoners are less likely to reform, to learn something, and to go back out as better members of society.
Well, that's correct. A prime example is Wandsworth Prison, which is built to hold just over 970 prisoners, which is currently housing over 1,600. So a prison that's built to house 900, built to house 900 prisoners with activity spaces to cater for them. When you've got nearly double that, what hope is there for rehabilitation? And prisoners get frustrated, and who bears the brunt of their frustrations and anger and boredom? The staff on the front line. So it is a boiling point. It is a tipping point. It is something that the government need to put right. And they need to look at not only sentencing policy, but freeing up spaces for people who really could be released back into society. So, for example, we currently have about 3,000 prisoners serving IPP sentences, some who are 10 and 15 years over their tariff, their release date. They're not all a danger to society. Why can't we free up spaces there and release some of them, maybe on a home detention curfew type thing with an ankle tag? You know, we've got a lot of people who are serving sentences for ridiculous things like non-payment of fines or not paying your TV licence.
Yeah.
Could we not give them a community sentence? It's ridiculous.
Yes.
That's £47,000 a year, Nigel, to keep someone in prison, and we're sending them to prison for not paying fines or not buying a TV licence.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. And as far as the BBC tax is concerned, it's mostly women, of course, who finish up in prison for this and not men. And I agree with you. There are areas like that that are clearly ridiculous. But is there not also, Mark Fairhurst, an argument that says we actually need to build newer, modern prisons?
Well, the problem with building new modern prisons is when you build a prison, you always fill it. And 9 times out of 10, the majority of prisons go to the private sector to run for profit. Now, we disagree with that. We've got members in the private sector and we look after them the best we can. And we have positive relationships with the private sector. But if the state incarcerates someone, the state should be responsible to look after them. Can we not look at sentencing policy? Can we not do things better? It's good that Alex Chalk, who I've got sympathy for, by the way, he inherited this mess. He didn't create it. It's good that he said there's a presumption on sentences of 12 months or less, where he's encouraging judges not to put people into prison who are sentenced to 12 months. But the public have got to be confident that they are serving robust community sentences with the correct supervision. And as you know, Nigel, it's not just the prison service which is under pressure. It's the probation service which are overworked and understaffed as well. And we're relying on them now to not only supervise these new releases in our communities, but relying on them to process the release and do the risk assessments. So I'm hoping it's not a rush job and the public is not put at risk.
Well, Mark Fairhurst, thank you for giving us your frank views.